Thank you all for coming today. We appreciate that the prospect of soaked shoes and frizzy hair did not deter you. I am Liz Lipoff, President of the Board of the Directors during this exciting and bittersweet time. Hello and thank you all, museum members and supporters, board members, donors, volunteers. Thanks to our community partners, to all the art lovers among us, and all the Judy lovers among us as well. And many, many thanks to the staff who once again outdid themselves planning and executing this event for us. And it looks like there are enough cookies for everybody. Another round of applause. I know, though, that we didn't have to tempt you with goodies to get you here for this splendid exhibit of Helen Frankenthaler's work and to talk about the many contributions and accomplishments of Judy Margles in Portland, in our community, in Oregon, and across the museum universe. Judy has led OJMCHE for 24 years, and under her leadership, we have evolved from a tiny museum without walls to several storefront locations to this beautiful building in 2017. One pivotal event was the merger in 2014 with the Oregon Holocaust Resource Center. Our stewardship of the Oregon Holocaust Memorial in Washington Park, accessible now both in person and online, is a critical part of our education program, critical maybe now more than ever. Judy also oversaw significant growth in the quality and breadth of our education and outreach. Scores of students come with their classes to tour our galleries every year, and our education team now provides resources and lessons on the Holocaust to teachers and students statewide and beyond. Also under Judy's leadership, after completing a successful and swift fundraising campaign, thank you everybody, the museum reopened last June with our new core exhibition, Human Rights After the Holocaust, as well as expanded galleries in the beautiful accessible space you saw on your way in. And in that space today, we are grateful to introduce to you the beautiful work of Helen Frankenthaler, innovative and breathtaking pieces from the collections of Jordan D. Schnitzer and his family foundation. I have learned from Judy how the generosity of Jordan and his foundation has enlivened and enriched Oregon Jewish Museum and Center for Holocaust Education's exhibition schedule over the years, with multiple powerful and memorable exhibitions. Most recently, some of you came to the Judy Chicago exhibition in 2022. On behalf of the board and the staff of the museum, we thank you, Jordan, for your continued support.
Good afternoon. This is a joyful moment, getting to talk about first Helen Frankenthaler and then Judy. So the way we're going to work this is I'll talk a little bit about Helen Frankenthaler, maybe some of the history of her life. Bruce will be coming on, who's so spectacular. I would learn so much when he talks about the work itself. And then I want to talk for a few minutes about Judy, who I've worked with, like many of you, for decades. So we'll start off with the Helen Frankenthaler piece for just a few minutes. And I've suggested before that you don't need to know anything about an artist. I think some people, it's interesting when I give these talks at the 180 exhibitions we've had around the country, people will say, oh, what's going on there? And I'll say, you know, when you hear some new music on whatever you're listening to and you get in that vibe, unless you're really a musician and think about how it was mixed and what combination of notes, whatever, we just get into it. You think about food. Most of us love food. Unless you're really a cook, you don't think about what temperature was at and what was mixed and whatever. But somehow with visual things, we seem to be threatened if we don't understand it instantly. So what I say to everyone, and this is so true with her work, is you just feel it. Just turn off the brain and open your heart and soul. And if there's an artist that touches all of us, oh, her work is just so breathtaking. She was born in 1928 in New York, lived in Park Avenue. Father was a very respected jurist on the New York Supreme Court. Mother Martha, difficult relationship. Youngest of 3 sisters, said to be the prettiest. She actually shows an acumen for art early as she took chalk from their Park Avenue apartment and on the street went all the way up to the Metropolitan Museum. A few years later, she went into her mother's makeup and got her nail polish and poured it into the sink so she could see it disperse. So if you think about little hints about the future to come, oh my gosh, okay. She goes to the Dalton School, which was a high-end school in New York. You know, our New York friends, they spend the time a kid is in kindergarten trying to get them lined up to go to Dalton. Her teacher there, interestingly enough, was Rafael Tamayo, a fabulous Mexican artist that I have some of his work, and he's legendary. She goes to Bennington College for Women then, and her teacher then was very taken away with Picasso. She gets out of school, moves to New York, gets a studio, and very quickly started going out with Clement Greenberg. Why does that mean so much? Well, first, the Portland Art Museum has the collection of his personal art collection, which they bought years ago, but he was the most important critic in New York, yielded far greater influence than any of the critics today. He was much older, she was younger. Some question that maybe she was using him a little bit to propel her career, but they were together for a few years there. So she started going to all the big art scenes and having his tutelage, meeting Jackson Pollock, all the big artists. She later marries Robert Motherwell, and they became sort of an A-list art couple on the scene. But back to her art, a seminal moment was in 1952 when she suddenly used some turpentine and she put it in with the paint to make the paint more watery. And she took a canvas and instead of coating it first so paint wouldn't spread, she put the paint on the canvas and started her brand of the paint that would sort of all do magical things on the canvas. And at the time, she was very criticized. Joan Mitchell, the big artist, said her work looked like looked like Kotex art, and she was criticized for the art looking very menstrual, whatever. So I mean, she was not wildly accepted then. She goes on, eventually divorces him. He started drinking later in life, and she married an investment person, moved to Darien, Connecticut, and that's where she lived the rest of her life. As to the prints, that really started mid-career. There was a couple, Maurice and Tanya Grossman, immigrants from Europe. They moved to Long Island, and in their garage, they start a printing press, and they started going after the New York School artists. And Helen was very close to Larry Rivers, who'd done some prints with them and convinced her to go try. So Bruce did a brilliant job picking, I mean, in a small space, he had to be very selective what he picked, but the first stone, you'll see it down there, it's the first one, is the first print she did, other than being a student, with ULAE, the firm that the Grossmans had created. And it was on a stone, and it went through 3 different sort of, colors and paper being smushed on the stone and so forth. She worked with them for about 10 years, and then a very important man named Ken Tyler. Ken Tyler in Los Angeles with Stanley Grinstein, Jewish from Seattle. Family had a Heister parts business, moved to L.A. After the war, he's in the Jewish fraternity at USC with a man named Sid Felsen. Sid Felsen became an accountant, and Sid calls him up and says, I'm taking some art classes at UCLA, come with me. They do. He says, why don't we start a print publishing business called Gemini GEL? Ken Tyler was their first printer, master printer. They had some issues a few years later. They left. Ken moves back to New York and starts his own print publishing operation and did some of the biggest names, as Gemini did too. So the second, another major print down there called Mulberry was the first print on handmade paper, meaning paper that the ink would work differently on. And that was the Mulberry print was the first one with Ken Tyler, and she worked with him for years. So in the end, in terms of her work, both her paintings, which I think are scrumptious, and especially her works on paper, probably the most important work is the work that looks like it's all wood-grained and so forth. That print went through a printing press 128 times. So these may look pretty simple, but like everything that looks simple, there's usually a lot of technique behind it. To finish up about her, what I think is remarkable is how joyful her work is. And I think during a time when we're so challenged geopolitically, my gosh, the Israel, Hamas, Putin, Xi, I mean, all the issues we've got, her art takes us on a journey, a joyful journey of colors and shapes and forms, and you get swept up with the technique too, that so subtly you don't even know what she's doing to you, but with her brilliant aesthetic eye. So I think it's a wonderful exhibition. Bruce will talk about the work in the wonderful way that he does, and we'll learn so much. But let me talk about another remarkable woman that we're all here to really thank, and that's Judy. I forget the first time she approached us with my father and mother and had that idea, and I think, you know, where are you? There she is, okay. Needless, I'm the least person to tell you about the amazing way she ingratiates herself and helps all of us do the right thing that we need to do, that sometimes we need a little direction and pushing, and and she's done such a wonderful job. You know, you've combined I was thinking about you, and you combine a wonderful executive management style, but in such a subtle, non-confrontational, collegial way. And that's why I think whether it's the staff that works so well with you, whether it's the donors, whether it's the artists, the whole community. I mean, you are a remarkable CEO. And then in terms of the Jewish community here, it's been a fascinating journey in the decades I've been involved since Beth Israel Youth at Temple Beth Israel and Share a Torah. My family all went on that side too. But the one thing that's been a thread that has tied all of us together with the ups and downs of synagogues and everything else and whatever has been the Jewish Museum that went from this fledgling little nothing to a little space over there northwest to the wonderful space you have now. And I dare say, yes, none of us are indispensable, whatever, but I mean, in the end, without your leadership, I'm not sure we'd be sitting here today in this facility, and I think everyone would agree with that. It's because of... So the bittersweet, as Liz said, was that on one hand, how can we not celebrate you and be happy for a professional life so well lived? What you've done is noble. So our latest big exhibition in New York is Judy Chicago. We had a version of it here. So I have something special for you from Judy to a Judy. Our Judy Chicago book, and I should change the name to know. So from the bottom of my heart and all of our hearts, we just can't thank you enough. And as I said, the bittersweet is that you've done so much so well. And you're entitled to take a breath. You said you're going to Paris with your sisters and other things. And, you know, while they may have lost you from day to day being here, I know we haven't all lost you from being a wonderful friend, partner, citizen, leader in future things to come that yet to be decided by you. So thank you for years of remarkable accomplishment.
Well done. Bruce Gunther, the former chief curator at the Portland Art Museum, is a curator of the Helen Frankenthaler exhibit. Fun fact, Judy and Bruce worked together on the museum's inaugural exhibition in this space, the stunning work of Grisha Bruskin. Since then, Bruce has curated a total of 7 exhibitions for us. Is that right? I have to fact check with him. So it seems appropriate that in this last month of Judy's tenure, Bruce was again able to work closely with her to bring us this beautiful exhibition. Please welcome Bruce Gunther.
It's nice to be here on a day that is auspicious. I think the volume's all right, isn't it? I think so. Be a little closer. That'll be easy. Okay. I have two tasks. Like Jordan, there's Frankenthaler, and there's Judy. And
you can focus on Frankenthaler.
I sort of actually planned that, Judy. You know, I thought, yeah. The other thing happened. Helen Frankenthaler, we decided that this would be the sort of last moment for the last month of Judy's time here, because it was a moment that we all needed beauty. It was a moment we all needed a chance to discover and hold close something that gave us hope and joy. And I was thrilled because I've been wanting to do a Frankenthaler show here for a long time. She is among the most important artists of the 20th century in America, if not the world. She changed the possibility of painting single-handedly. Jordan referred to her staining and pouring in the 1950s. Helen Frankenthaler, a child of privilege, an intellect unmatched in her generation among her colleagues, except for her husband of 13 years, Robert Motherwell. That's why they were the golden couple. They brought together a passion and an innovation intellectually and physically in painting that previous generations had not accomplished. And she made a contribution inside of two mediums. She changed the way painting arrived on the canvas. Unlike Jackson Pollock, who presented a dead end, a singular vision that could not be replicated or led anywhere, Frankenthaler moved to the floor, and she found a voice and a way of working that combined intellect and the primacy of feelings and material in a new and uncharted land. Her work releases the stored knowledge and memories of experiences in the physical world through the contact and the evolution of a work of art in the studio. She is the only one of the abstract expressionist first and second generation artists to have innovated in the act of painting, the vocabulary and the paradigm of painting, through the staining and the soaking of the canvas. As she steps into the second medium, printmaking, and attacks the conventions and the assumptions of one of our most hidebound mediums. Her work with the great ateliers of the 60s, 70s, and 80s in American printmaking, the advent of the professional atelier in its fullest form in America, comes at a moment when she is singular among the abstract painters of her day and of the expressionist generation to have changed and worked in prints. Her contribution there undermined what had been the convention of the little black and white print. You know, the print that locally Gordon Gilkey celebrated, the print that has never been part of the Schnitzer Foundation, where the print collection dances in the territory that was defined in great deal, in great measure, by Helen Frankenthaler. It was with her combination of literary and intellectual knowledge and her willingness to interact with medium, to become lost in a process in which the medium pushed this and presented the red, and she responded and found green. She takes the green and she invests in yellow. It is a dance between color and a form, unseen before Helen Frankenthaler contributes, in which the abstraction is also realistic, because what you see instantly in confronting a Frankenthaler work, as you go downstairs, when you go down, think about, I am looking at, and what you're looking at is not a picture of a tree, it's not a metaphor for a myth, it is the experience in real form of the purity of color, and somewhere it is the memory and the knowledge of physical experience in the world, shared. As Helen said, I look at a tree and I go to the canvas and I forget the tree and my arms find its experience. The poetry of the process, of the dance between color and shape, silhouette and form, finds expression in the work of Helen Frankenthaler. In painting, but even more so in printmaking, the most hidebound of processes. She changes the nature of the art and the medium of printmaking, and specifically woodcut. It's a very interesting idea. When you think of woodcut, you think of German expressionist prints, Kirchner and Schmidt-Rottluff, and this black and white, or Leonard Baskin, her colleague, her peer. He's born in 22, she's born in 28. They are the same generation aesthetically, and in time, but not aesthetically. It is in that work that I found the center of this exhibition, because the exhibition is designed to trace not only her 40 years of printmaking, but also to reveal to the curious visitor the evolution of her painting as well, from the first print, a lithograph in which the puddling of touche and the spread of crayon defines an abstraction that mirrors the paintings of her early 60s and the late 50s, to the latest work, the Japanese maple, in which the color is not isolated in form, but is a river of magenta and purple, reds charged with green and turquoise blue. That is the activation of the flipping of a maple leaf in the fall. The wet leaf, the dry leaf, the light and the leaves of a tree that she found a voice for in the process of making a print that had to be developed stone after stone, color after color. Jordan referred to Madame Butterfly, which is probably one of the 10 most important prints in the 20th century. With 102 colors, 46 blocks, hand-carved wood blocks. She collaborated with a Japanese printmaker to make it. 3 years to produce it. She changed the nature of how we think about printmaking. It's not a simple process of a relief print, but rather is an evolution that steps from proof to proof sheet. Each step a new, her recarving of a block, notoriously famous for taking her collaborator's block or what the print workers in the atelier had done and saying, no, this isn't working. And she would take out a piece of sandpaper and resand the touche on the lithostone. She took a jigsaw and cut the wood block into pieces and began to reform them for another round. Month after month, series of prints after series of prints. She looked for the moment when the action and the emotion found a result in the paper that would eventually become an edition print of poetry, of emotion, of possibility. the possibility becoming an emotion, the possibility becoming an artifact. And so in choosing the show, there are 4 of the most important prints she ever made in this exhibition. They were selected from over 75 works by Frankenthaler in the Schnitzer collection, which is one of the largest single bodies of work outside of the foundation, the Frankenthaler Foundation itself. Institutions, it turns out, don't have as many prints by Frankenthaler as Jordan has been able to accumulate here. We have the joy of the moment, the invention and the discovery in successive years of an artist with a fertile mind and a curiosity and a commitment to making real that which we have experienced through the process of abstraction and the two-dimensionality of the world of painting and printmaking. I hope you will enjoy Frankenthaler as it has given us all a great joy in the last weeks installing it and living with the color, taking the memory with us home through these rain-soaked streets to the inevitability of yet another horrible news day. It gives us reason, just as it gave voice to the optimism and the commitment of a singular American woman, a Jewish artist who has graced the world and changed the way we understand painting and printmaking. Enjoy that. It has been a pleasure. I was asked to share a moment about how I came to be here, and it's all about Judy in a way. I got a call from Northwest Kearney. She wanted to talk to me in 2016 because they were going to move. And they were going to move to the DeSoto building, which I had happily a hand in bringing into being. And she said, I'd like you to be would you consider being a consulting curator? I loved your Rothko show, and I'd really like you to do something like that for us. And it was sort of and I'm thinking, okay. And we got to talking about the role that art plays at a museum of Jewish history and the Holocaust education, and how I proposed, no, maybe I'd like to be an adjunct curator. Let me bring your art program into dialogue with the rest of the museum. Let me rethink art's place as this program. And she said, really? Having some ownership, you want to do that? All right. And so we walked into this pristine white space one day, and I said, I have this artwork we want to show. Of course, we're going to have to paint the room black and cover all the windows. And she said, really? And we laughed, and I said, oh, yes. We're going to change it immediately. And Grisha Briskin's tapestries arrived, filled with the mysticism and the magic of imagery and language, in a darkened room, a great arc of one of the oldest art forms, tapestry, and we began a program to bring the world and the contribution of Jewish artists to this city, to fill a niche in the community where we could understand the contribution, the issues, and the context of art created by Jews. And it was Judy's vision who said, okay, let's try it. Little did I realize I would be the telephone call she made as she walked the dog or walked from the office to the bus, because her day is so full with meetings and everything that we would often find the only time we had a chance to really game plan and think about things was on the way to the bus or to walk the dog. And it was a joy. I got used to the sound of wind in my phone and rain and the laughter that would come, as the dog would find something, she would miss the bus. It was in that moment I realized that her enthusiasm and our laughter was creating something that I hadn't had in a big institution. And it was something that I think filled this building with an energy and a possibility. And so, we did Judy Chicago, we did Mel Bachner. Jordan collaborated with us and made available things we needed. We did I Am This, where Judy finally had Mark Rothko, but it wasn't a floating square. It was paintings he made in Portland, that he made in Oregon. And it started to look at a group of artists across 100 years of Oregon history and the contributions they made, from Fred Littman to Hilda Morris to Amy Bernstein, a young artist who we showed for the first time. It was all because Judy Margles was willing to risk. And Judy Margles is also the most demanding editor I've ever had. I am a person of words and ideas, and she's a person of ideas and words eliminated. And she believes that you won't read a panel that's 400 words. You will only tolerate a panel that's 250 words. I believe we're a room of readers. We're all looking for words and ideas. So we would have these, I will happily say, laughter-filled conversations as we noodled and canoodled these texts that would start out with "in the beginning" and would end with Revelation. And she would say, couldn't we just jump to the color part? And we danced and we danced. And I will miss that dance. She was a great editor and more fun than any collaborator in past. So thank you, Judy, for what you've done for the institution.
I'm always too short to really hold the mic and figure that out, but I'm really overwhelmed, as you can imagine. I was standing over here and looking out and seeing all these people I haven't yet had a chance to say hello to. So I hope I do before that afternoon. And so I just want to thank Liz. I want to thank Jordan so much for your lovely words. And Bruce, my dear friend, my colleague, my fellow conspirator of exhibitions, I am really beyond grateful. But I think I have some good news. We're not going to talk about me anymore. We just enough. I really only want to talk about all of you, right? So indulge me for just a few minutes. I am really finding myself filled with absolute appreciation and obviously some nostalgia as I do inch perilously closer to retirement. And really what I'm going to do, I hope I'll be very brief, but just have this opportunity to express my gratitude that I'm really overwhelmed with right now and really extends to everybody in this room and more. However, I do want to just start with acknowledging two people who are no longer with us, which I think is very, very important. The museum's founders, Alice Meyer, I know one of Alice's daughters is here. There she is. Andrea is here today, and Rabbi Joshua Stamfer. Alice and Rabbi Stamfer were the forces who founded the Oregon Jewish Museum. Alice served as our first president and then chaired numerous committees. I find myself, I don't know, for those of you who knew Alice, if you share this, I've really been thinking a lot about her lately because she was always remarkably and everlastingly full of hope. It was led by this insatiable curiosity she had and this just fine political outlook. I do wonder what her advice would be today as we're kind of gnarling through these really difficult issues facing our world. Rabbi Stamfer personified a distinctly American Judaism. I'm looking at his daughter-in-law, Carol, who's here. Carol, I'm so glad you're here. He personified this distinctively American Judaism, which I think we've tried to emulate here. He envisioned a museum resting firmly on two pillars, right? Two sturdy pillars, the eternal values of an evolving Judaism, and the commitment to historical memory and social change that is absolutely integral to our democracy. I also want to extend deep gratitude to our dedicated staff who have truly been the driving force behind our success. The museum began as a staff of 2, and we have 20 staff today. I normally love to name everyone. You know who you are. I just want our staff just to raise our hand. They absolutely deserve a huge round of applause. And it really is together that we've worked. Together we've curated numerous exhibits that have illuminated the richness and diversity of Jewish art, history, and culture. Bruce mentioned Aleph Bet, these tapestries by Grusha Bruskin, worth repeating again. Bruce curated this show. I have such affection when I think about this opening exhibit in this space in 2017. Thank you, Bruce. Mel Bachner from Jordan's collection, of course. The last journey of the Jews of Lodz, I don't know if anybody remembers that we did with Memory Unearthed. We partnered with the Portland Art Museum, and so many more exhibitions that we did in this museum. As Liz said, our education programs now draw thousands and thousands of teachers and students annually. The museum collection, artifacts, and archives mirror the Oregon Jewish community. And of course, also as Liz reminded us, but always want to mention the Oregon Holocaust Memorial, which really does stand as a stark reminder of the tragedy of the Holocaust and our perennial urgency to make sure that Oregonians know about it. The memorial brings me to our cherished community of Holocaust survivors. I'm just so delighted that Eva and Evie and Roz are here today. If I'm forgetting any other, oh, Ruth, there you are. I heard, I'm so sorry. And Ruth as well. What I have learned from you, all of you, is truly immeasurable. And the privilege I have had of knowing many of you personally has been one of the strongest motivators for my work. Thank you for your friendship, and thank you for the invaluable lessons that you impart to create a better future. Your testimonies have contributed to historical clarity and crucial for preventing any more atrocity in the future. So thank you. I also need to extend my gratitude to our board of directors, current and past, for their sustained and sustaining guidance, wisdom, steadfast support over these many years. Your commitment to the museum's mission and vision helps to shape its success, ensures its continued impact on our community. Rebecca Sobel, our incoming director, will quickly see how very fortunate she is to work with such an outstanding board. So thank you, thank you. To our volunteers and supporters, thank you for your generosity and commitment to preserving Jewish heritage and for your contributions that enabled us to build and grow in this building and foster an inclusive space for understanding and appreciation. Everybody deserves some thanks, but I hope you'll forgive me. I'm going to just take a brief segue. I'd like to acknowledge my beautiful daughters. They're back there, Pesha and Shuli, who are, without doubt, my greatest reward. Oh, all right, hold on a minute. They do have a little bit of competition. I do have a grandson, Leo. Unfortunately, he's under the weather today. He was going to be here. But what I hope for Leo and what I hope for his generation, I really do hope that our work at the museum, our work to tackle issues central to the upholding of democracy, I hope that our work pays off and contributes to repairing a fractured world so that when Leo comes of age, he is entering a more full and repaired world. And Steve, where did he go? Where did he go? He left. There he is. So Steve, in case you don't know, Steve is my husband. In both good times and bad times, challenging moments, you are always encouraging, listening carefully, offering your ever-wise counsel. Steve is also retiring after a brilliant 36-year career at Reed College. We actually figured out how to retire at the same time. Maybe we should set up a business and advise. There's absolutely no one in the world that I would rather be with going forward. So thank you. As you may know, I'm not the only one retiring from the museum at the end of December. I'm joined by my colleague, my beloved friend, and the museum's curator of collection, Anne Levant-Prawl. I think Anne should just come up here so I can embarrass her entirely. Anne and I have worked together for decades. I think we were like 10 when we started our work. We met when Anne was the mother of very young children. She volunteered at OMSI, where I was working as the curator. I wouldn't necessarily characterize Anne as a quiet person, but I would say with absolute seriousness that it is her quiet contributions to the museum that have been instrumental to its success. Anne loves things that only collections curators can love. The database, accessioning objects, writing policy for the museum. I do want to apologize to Anne, but I think I've described the very definition of a museum nerd. Of course, Anne is so much more. She's hugely creative. She's a talented writer, smarter than all of us, and I mean that, and without doubt, one of the best colleagues anybody could hope to work with. Anne, we love you. I love you. And any chance you're free January 2nd to go for a walk and have lunch? Yes. So one of the hallmarks of our work has been the commitment to fostering dialogue and facing critical conversations. Our museum has been a space where stories, both joyous and challenging, have been brought to light, and we're certainly feeling it now as we acknowledge the nearly 2 months since the October 7th rampage, and the suffering and bloodshed faced by Israelis and Palestinians is still very much on our hearts and minds. And we know that there aren't any easy answers to the surge of hateful violence, speech, and action taking place in this country and around the world. Still, in its own small way, the museum has provided a way to counter prejudice and foster dialogue. I cling to the hope, I've said this before, I'm just going to say it again, but I do cling to the hope that in this time of division and fracture, our collective narrative might remain a meeting place for commonality. History can be our common ground, even as it can be a contested history. History, with its multiplicity of voices, invites complexity, nuanced interpretations, and thoughtful reflection. I am just bursting with pride. I burst with pride all the time. I really should explode, but I'm bursting with pride with our staff and our board for your willingness to grow, learn, find ways to strengthen our understanding of each other in these unrelentingly demanding times. It is in these moments of discomfort we find the seeds of understanding, and we do find ways to face the magnitude of our uneasy histories. I know I have a last place page here. Years back, I did tuck away something written by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. If you know the name, he was the chief rabbi in London and passed away in the last few years, I believe. But the context of his thought is not particularly relevant to us. He was discussing a biblical encounter after many years between Jacob and Esau, but what he says has always had relevance for me. He refers to one of the most remarkable of all of the Torah's narrative devices, and this is the power of the future to transform our understanding of the past. New situations retrospectively disclose new meanings of the text, and he says the present is never fully determined by the past. Sometimes it is only later that we understand the now. And of course, this is one of the goals at this museum. We want to make meaning out of what was before, not in terms of nostalgia or narcissistic or a preservationist urge, but as a way to provide meaning. The museum bears the burden of the future from the perspective of the past. That is what we do as historians. My hope is that the museum continues to be a beacon of understanding, a place where diverse voices can come together in dialogue, and a sanctuary for the exploration of our shared humanity. I have every confidence that it will flourish under the capable hands of Rebecca Sobel, who will begin in January. And I know you're all going to welcome her warmly, as I will. In closing, I do want to just thank each and every one of you. As I prepare to end my tenure as director, I am confident that the legacy that we have created together will likewise continue. It's a shared legacy that testifies to hope that we can all work together to build a better future for the Leos of this world. Thank you.
Please feel free to clean us out of cookies, visit with each other, say hello and goodbye to Judy. Stay as long as you'd like.